Officials say it was just another shooting, but King Von's father claims it was a setup by Lil Durk himself. If that's true, then the night Von died wasn't chaos, it was a plan. What if King Von didn't just die in a street fight? What if someone close to him wanted him gone? New evidence in Atlanta's court is forcing everyone to ask, was Von set up? King Von survived 2 surgeries after being shot, but what happened in that hospital room before he died is something nobody expected. And now, shocking allegations point fingers at Lil Durk. Officials have confirmed that one of the 3 people killed in a late-night shooting was Chicago rapper King Von. He had been in Atlanta with friends that night when gunfire broke out, leaving 6 people involved. Among the victims was Von himself, whose real name was Devin Bennett. Now, the case has been reopened in Atlanta's court system after new evidence surfaced, evidence that is sparking major controversy. Claims of a setup. According to Von's father, his son was set up and all signs point to Lil Durk. He alleges that Durk made secret arrangements behind the scenes. In one exchange that has been cited, Durk supposedly asked Von's associate, "Vonnie, is it open?" A phrase that Vonnie reportedly replied to with, "It's off the hinges." To some, this sounded like backdoor slang, a code that something was in motion. Questions then arose. Did Vonnie betray King Von? Was Lil Durk truly connected to the hit? Von's father insists there's financial proof, including potential testimony from bankers who can show large sums of money moving at the time. Motive behind the allegations. When asked why Lil Durk would want King Von gone, Von's father pointed to business and pride. Von wasn't under a restrictive contract, wasn't tied to a 360 deal, and wasn't signed directly to Durk. In fact, Von was building his own momentum, possibly outshining Durk. How you bring someone in and they pass you up, his father argued. Nobody wants their spot taken. This has led many to question whether jealousy or business conflicts could have been the motive. Social media patterns. Another detail that fans have noticed, Durk often goes live on Instagram around the time people connected to him pass away. For example, when Von, Lil Pab, and FBG Duck were killed, Durk was live online. Supporters say it's coincidence. Critics believe he uses it as an alibi. Questions around Von's final hours. Medical records reveal another surprising twist. Von actually survived the initial shooting and made it through 2 surgeries. But after the second operation, he reportedly woke up in shock, jumped out of bed, and lashed out at a nurse, demanding his gun. That incident is said to have triggered his final collapse. Even more troubling, Von had hired bodyguards to protect him, yet when the fight broke out, they did nothing. Witnesses say his security walked away, leaving Von to confront the situation himself. Police bodycam footage later confirmed that while his friends were nearby, no bodyguards were present during the chaos. The night of November 5, 2020. According to official reports, King Von and his team had been out in Atlanta celebrating the release of his album Welcome to a Block. What began as a night of music and success ended in tragedy, sparking years of speculation, rumors, and investigations that continue to this day. The night was supposed to be a celebration. After years of grinding through the struggles of street life, King Von had finally found success in music. But what was meant to be a victory lap turned into the night that cut his story short. Von had always been careful. Growing up in O Block taught him to stay alert, and he usually traveled heavy. That night, his crew rolled 20 people deep across 8 cars, plus his manager confirmed that Von had a custom armored truck and multiple security guards. To everyone around him, Von's safety seemed locked down. But something about this night was different. Normally, after a party, Von's team would head straight to the hotel or Airbnb. Instead, Von suddenly told his driver to take him to Monaco Lounge, an after-hours spot. The rest of his team wasn't even told. They had to double back after realizing Von had gone alone. When Von's manager finally arrived at Monaco Lounge, he immediately sensed something was off. King Von, who was usually the heartbeat of the group, the one laughing, talking, and hyping everyone up, was quiet. Instead of celebrating the release of his album and the success he had been chasing for years, he sat in the backseat of his truck, motionless, eyes locked on his phone. This wasn't the Von his people were used to seeing. He had a reputation for being lively, unpredictable in a good way, and always carrying the kind of energy that lit up a room. But on this night, he seemed distant, almost weighed down by something heavy. His manager later recalled that Von barely spoke. He just stayed there in the dark, staring at his screen for nearly 40 minutes while the rest of the crew waited. After a long stretch of silence, his manager leaned in and tried to snap him out of it. "Yo, Von, what's going on? Everybody's here, waiting." Let's go inside. Eventually, Vaughn nodded and they decided to move. But safety was always the first priority. To protect him, his crew sent a few men into the club before Vaughn made his entrance. They walked through the building, checked corners, and scanned the outside, making sure nothing looked out of place. That small precaution, however, created a bigger problem. While some of his men were inside doing security checks, fewer people were left outside to watch the parking lot, the very place where real danger was waiting. Because across the lot, parked in a white SUV, was Quando Rondo and his crew. The two rappers had already been circling each other online. Social media back and forth, subtle disses, and public tension had fueled a rivalry that fans followed closely. Nobody thought it would come to a head that night, but fate had other plans. One of Vaughn's associates spotted Quando sitting in that SUV and rushed to tell him, "Yo, he's here." The moment Vaughn heard the words, everything changed. The still, quiet demeanor vanished. He jumped out of the truck without hesitation, fueled by emotion. Vaughn didn't wait for strategy or backup. He didn't even pause to think about whether it was smart. He just moved. Video footage from that night shows Vaughn, dressed in a white shirt, storming toward the SUV. He spots Quando, pulls up directly in front of him, and throws the first punch. Within seconds, a full-on brawl broke out in the middle of the parking lot. At first, it was fists flying, Vaughn swinging, Quando trying to hold his own, but the fight turned fast. Quando's close friend, Lil Tim, realized things weren't going well. He jumped out from the passenger side of the SUV, gun in hand, and fired. Bullets hit Vaughn, dropping him in the chaos. His manager was also shot in the leg. Vaughn's crew reacted instantly. Some returned fire, and Lil Tim fell to the ground as gunshots rang through the night. The sound of clips unloading echoed through the lot, creating panic and confusion. People scattered, ducking behind cars, not knowing where the next bullet might come from. Two off-duty police officers, already nearby, pulled up when they heard the shots. But instead of de-escalating the scene, they added more fuel to the fire. Both officers drew their weapons and fired into the chaos, wounding at least one more member of Vaughn's team. Through it all, Vaughn was on the ground, fighting to stay conscious. Witnesses say even as he bled, he was still holding on to Quando, refusing to let him go. Some speculated he was trying to stop Quando from running. Others said it was just the raw strength and willpower of a man refusing to give up. Eventually, Quando's crew dragged him back toward their SUV and sped off, leaving Vaughn bleeding in the lot. That's when Miup, one of Vaughn's closest friends, rushed into the street. Seeing his brother down, he scooped Vaughn up and carried him to their car. With no time to lose, they sped toward the hospital. Inside that vehicle, the scene was desperate. Friends panicked, yelling, begging Vaughn to hold on. But in the middle of the chaos, Vaughn himself stayed calm. Even with bullet wounds tearing through him, he tried to reassure the people around him. "Chill. Slow down. I'm good. Just get me to the hospital." Those words showed who Vaughn was: resilient, strong-willed, and determined to survive. His friends clung to that hope as the car tore through the Atlanta streets toward emergency care. At the hospital, doctors rushed him into surgery. Word spread quickly across social media that King Von had been shot. Fans, family, and fellow artists waited anxiously for updates, praying he would pull through. Against the odds, Vaughn survived 2 operations. For a moment, there was hope. But after the second surgery, reports say Vaughn woke up in a state of shock. Confused, disoriented, and panicked, he allegedly looked for a gun that wasn't there. In that frantic state, his body gave out. Not long after, King Von was pronounced dead. The tragedy rippled everywhere, through his neighborhood of O Block, through Atlanta, and across the rap world. Vaughn had been seen as a rising star, one of the few who could take street storytelling and turn it into something powerful and respected in mainstream hip-hop. Now, his story ended on a night that was supposed to be another chapter in his success. What makes it harder to accept for his fans and loved ones is the way it unfolded. Vaughn traveled heavy, he had protection, and he was cautious. But a single decision, to reroute to a club at the last minute, without telling most of his team, shifted the night. His people weren't where they needed to be, danger slipped in, and within minutes, a celebration became a tragedy. Even today, questions linger. Could someone have stopped him before he jumped out of the truck? Should his security have done more? Was it simply fate, or was there more behind the scenes? What's clear is this: King Von's death didn't just end a life. It shook an entire generation of fans, left scars in his community, and fueled tensions in rap that still echo years later. That danger came in the form of Quando Rondo, who was parked nearby in a white SUV. The two had gone back and forth online before, and when one of Vaughn's guys spotted Quando, Vaughn's mood flipped. Without hesitation, he jumped out of his truck and rushed straight at him. Surveillance footage shows Vaughn in a white shirt swinging first, landing blows on Quando. Within seconds, chaos erupted. Quando's associate, Lil Tim, pulled a gun from behind the SUV and fired multiple shots, hitting Vaughn. His manager was struck in the leg as the scene exploded into gunfire. Vaughn's friends fired back, dropping Lil Tim to the ground. The night was already spinning out of control, but the sound of bullets changed everything. Those sharp cracks in the air pulled the attention of two off-duty police officers who were stationed nearby. Instead of de-escalating the violence, their response only escalated the chaos. They drew their weapons and opened fire. Suddenly, the scene wasn't just two crews clashing. It was a full-blown crossfire, with bullets flying from every direction. In the middle of it all, King Von crumpled to the pavement. The gunshots had found their mark, but even as his strength drained from him, he refused to let go. Witnesses later described the haunting image, Von clutching tightly onto Quando Rondo, refusing to release his grip. To some onlookers, it seemed like he was still in the fight, trying to drag Quando down with him. Others believed something deeper, that Von wasn't trying to snatch jewelry or humiliate his rival. He was simply holding on, trying to stay alive, as if letting go meant letting death claim him. The parking lot became pure panic. Screams filled the air, cars peeled off in every direction, and flashes from guns lit the night like camera bulbs at a red carpet event. Those close to Von rushed to him, shouting his name, begging him to hang on. Quando's team scrambled too, dragging their wounded away as the shooting spread. What should have been a night of celebration, Von's album release, had collapsed into a nightmare. As Von lay on the ground, his longtime friend and loyal O'Block brother, Myup, ran forward. In the middle of gunfire, he didn't hesitate. He scooped Von's limp body into his arms and carried him toward their car. Every second felt like it mattered. The goal was simple: get Von to a hospital before it was too late. Inside the car, the atmosphere was frantic. Friends were shouting, some crying, others trying to press against Von's wounds to slow the bleeding. Von, however, surprised them. Even as his body weakened, he showed the same grit that made him a legend in his neighborhood. According to those who were there, Von looked around at his panicked friends and spoke calmly. "Relax. Chill. I'm good. Just get me to the hospital." That quiet confidence gave his crew hope. They sped through Atlanta's streets, pushing red lights, praying the hospital wasn't too far. Every bump, every corner turned, felt like a battle against time. When they finally arrived, doctors rushed Von straight into surgery. Word spread within minutes. Social media exploded with whispers, "King Von's been shot." Fans around the world stayed glued to their phones, refreshing for updates. Some prayed, some panicked, and some refused to believe it. Against the odds, Von survived his first surgery. Hours later, he made it through a second. For a brief moment, the people who loved him thought he might actually pull through. But reports suggest that after waking up, Von was disoriented. Still caught in the trauma of the night, he allegedly searched for a gun that wasn't there. In that frantic state, his body gave out. Not long after, King Von was pronounced dead. News outlets confirmed what fans feared. Chicago rapper King Von had been killed in Atlanta. The fight outside the club had started as fists, but escalated when Quando Rondo's close associate, Lil Tim, fired the shots that struck Von. In the days that followed, confusion and speculation spread even faster than the headlines. Some fans insisted Von's death could have been prevented if he'd had better security. Others pointed out that he chose to jump out of the truck and confront Quando without backup. Conspiracy theories filled the void, with people questioning whether there was more to the story than what was seen on camera. Quando eventually spoke out, saying the situation never should have happened and that lives on both sides had been changed forever. Lil Tim, who was wounded during the shootout, was arrested and charged with murder, but later argued self-defense, claiming he only acted to protect his friend. The tragedy of that night didn't end at the hospital doors. Von's death set off a ripple effect that would stretch far beyond Atlanta. It reignited old rivalries, sparked retaliation, and pulled even more people into the cycle of violence that had already claimed too many young lives in hip-hop. But the memory most people hold on to is that final moment in the street, the image of Von, wounded but still refusing to let go. It symbolized the way he lived, fighting to the very end, with a grip so tight even death had to pry it loose. Eventually, Kwando's crew grabbed him and sped off in their SUV. Meanwhile, Vaughn's friend Miup ran into the street, picked Vaughn up, and carried him to a waiting car. They raced toward the hospital, Vaughn's blood soaking through, but his spirit still unbroken. Inside that car, panic filled the air. But Vaughn, even in his weakest moment, tried to steady his friends. "Calm down," he told them. "Just get me to the hospital. I'll be good." People who knew King Von said they thought he would be okay after the shooting. In the car on the way to the hospital, Vaughn tried to calm his friends. But after 2 surgeries, he sadly died. Some sources say Vaughn woke up confused in the hospital and looked for a gun he didn't actually have. People close to the situation found that detail strange. Boozy had even said 2 years earlier that Vaughn didn't carry a gun. Many wondered why Vaughn was even near that other man, especially with security around. If real, professional protection had been there, some say this whole thing might have been avoided. The story blew up in the news. Officials confirmed the victim was Chicago rapper King Von. The fight that night started as a physical argument and then turned into gunfire. Authorities say Kwando and Lil Tim were the ones who pulled guns. Both men later spoke about the tragedy. Kwando said it could and should have been handled differently. He said people on his side have families and that the whole situation was senseless. Lil Tim also said he was trying to protect his brother. When people first learned Vaughn died, reactions were mixed. Some thought the whole thing was avoidable. Lil Tim survived his wounds and was arrested, charged in Vaughn's death, but his lawyer argued self-defense and the charges were later dropped before an indictment. The violence didn't stop there. Retaliation followed. Lil Pab, a friend of Kwando's, was killed in a separate attack that some tie back to tensions with Vaughn's circle. That shooting helped trigger a wider investigation and the arrest of others. Lil Durk has been accused by some of being involved in a paid hit. He was arrested on murder-for-hire-related charges tied to these incidents. Lyrics and social posts from Durk fed more controversy. Some fans interpreted his lines as boasting about violence. New video and body cam footage and witness statements shifted the case and added pressure. One person named Ted, the younger brother of D, who was closely tied to Durk, was arrested with a firearm. Reportedly, Ted broke down in custody and offered information to investigators, saying he would tell what he knew to get out of jail. That put him on a witness list and confused fans who thought D had flipped. There were also rumors that cousins and other close associates were cooperating. Friends of Durk pushed back publicly, calling many of these claims false and urging people not to jump to conclusions. Commentators like DJ Academic tried to sort through the paperwork and explain what was true and what was rumor. He reminded viewers that headlines can be misleading and that court filings are the real source of facts. The deaths and arrests have shaken O-Block and rival crews. In the years after Vaughn's death, several members tied to FBG Duck's murder were arrested, and Durk's detainment has made some people in those circles feel exposed. Streets that once felt untouchable now feel dangerous. Fans and locals even keep a close eye on King Von's mural. People are careful when they visit it, aware of the tensions it represents.